Hey guys, Kid Creep here. Today we're looking at some layers from the PCU system that Patagonia added with the Block 2. Now on the channel we typically talk about the Block 0, which was the test run of the PCU system originally issued back in 2001, and then the Block 1 being the Gen 2 that was the actual official accepted version that was issued to Special Forces. So the Block 2 you can really think of as like the Gen 3 in the grand scheme of the PCU system. And they started offering it in both multicam, AOR1, and AOR2. And not only that, but Patagonia also added 2 new layers within level 3. So first we are going to talk about level 3 alpha. We're gonna go in alphabetical order. This here is the Patagonia level 3A in AOR2. As we all know, in the Block 0, Block 1, as well as Equix Gen 3, level 3 was a high loft synthetic fleece. But in this later Block 2, Patagonia decided to follow the trends of the 21st century and start making them as a low loft puffer. So as we all know, fleeces are tried and true. They are warm, they're breathable, and they're durable, but they're not nearly as light and packable as something like a low loft puffer. So it would make sense that high-speed guys in US Special Forces would want something like a low loft puffer over a fleece. And the other cool thing about a puffer is that they are very versatile because they can fill a lot of roles very easily because they have a nylon outer fabric that can be either windproof or waterproof. And Patagonia said, hey, why not both? So the level 3 alpha that we see here is a low loft puffer with a windproof, water resistant outer fabric, whereas level 3 Bravo is going to be a low loft with a hard shell waterproof membrane. Now, before we go any further, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Venture Surplus. So I have very specific hyperfixations that generally tend to be pretty expensive as well. So Venture Surplus does a really awesome job of giving me some great alternatives for you guys so that you can build out your own cold weather layering system. What's nice about Venture Surplus is that they carry a very broad range of gear, everything from just some run-of-the-mill ACUs and some Equix Gen 2 stuff, as well as more Gucci options like Beyond Clothing and Cry Precision, and then everything in between. So they offer a lot of high quality, genuine US surplus that is also very budget friendly, whereas something like the level 3 Alpha and Bravo are not. Venture Surplus did also send a couple of really cool layers for us to test out that can fit within these level 3 Alpha and Bravo designations. Here I have a Woobie hoodie that they offer, as well as the Snugpak Torrent. Both of these are really nice packable low loft layers that may fit within your system, but more importantly, within your budget. They also give us a discount code, so if you want either of these garments or anything else, you can use discount code KICKCREEP for 10% off your entire order at checkout. That just lets them know that you came from my channel and they should totally keep working with me because they're really cool guys over there. So thank you again to Venture Surplus for sponsoring this video. All right, so level 3 alpha. Like I said, this is a low loft puffer, which puts it within the level 3 mid-layer category. The term low loft is relative to something that's a high loft layer, say like the level 7 jacket and pants. High loft gives you maximum warmth in extreme cold, whereas a low loft is going to give you static warmth in cool weather as well as active warmth in extreme cold, making it very versatile within your system. And of course, the coolest part is that this does actually have a wind shell outer fabric that basically makes this thing a level 3 insulating mid layer combined with a level 4 wind shear. So according to Patagonia, level 3 plus level 4 equals level 3 alpha. Fucking variables. So this means that we're taking 2 levels from the 7-level layering system and combining them into just one garment. This allows you to carry extra warmth as well as wind protection while reducing the amount of space and weight inside of your pack. This makes it really convenient for cool weather when you're carrying a much smaller pack because it packs down so small it can fit even in something like a map pack. So in the event of high wind chill in a cool weather environment, you're able to just easily grab your level 3 alpha out of your little pack and stay warm as opposed to donning a level 3 and then having to add a level 4 on over top to add wind protection. By only needing to don one garment, this then reduces the amount of time that it takes to add both warmth and wind protection, thus mitigating heat loss and preserving that valuable body heat that you earned while you were active. And of course, in the event of rain, this thing is not waterproof. It's just a water-resistant outer shell. But if you need to add water protection, because this thing is a mid-layer and it's so nice and form-fitting, it very easily fits underneath a hard shell in order to stay dry in heavy rains. All right, so let's take a close look at the features of this jacket, because that will help us better understand how it's supposed to be used. So first of all, we do have a full-length zipper up here on the front. Full-length zippers are great for being able to easily don a jacket over something like, a giant helmet. So instead of having to pull it over your head and, have it get all caught up on like night vision and communications and wires and strobes, this just easily wraps around you. Also, it's nice for if you're throwing it over at the top of body armor in order to just kind of let it hang there and you still have access to everything there, and then you can easily pull it right back off. Down here at the bottom, we do have two little hand warmer pockets that are zippered, so you are able to stow things inside of there. And then when you pull your jacket out of your pack, you can have like some little hats or glove liners sitting in there. Also really good for keeping your hands warm. Moving up to the chest, we do have a little chest pocket here on the outside, so we can stow things like a little skull cap in there. Now, looking at the shoulders, we do not see any shoulder pockets or any ID marker panels with Velcro, right? If you do need that, then of course you can just throw your little 5 over top, because that already has it. Down at the wrist, we just have a little bit of elastic. There is no adjustment, which I think is great. Just reduces the weight and bulk by keeping it nice and simple. So I do like that a lot. And then down here at the hem, we do have some little barrel locks for tightening up the hem. And then the extra cordage is stowed inside of the hand pockets. They're not just flapping out in the world trying to snag on something. Looking up at the collar, we just have a nice little insulated collar, and we don't see a hood, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So this jacket here is a medium long. I typically wear medium long when I want a close fit, but I have orangutan arms and a little bit of a longer torso. Now I will say around my hips and my butt, the hem is really tight. It doesn't really flare out like most jackets do. It actually kind of tapers in, which is kind of annoying, but it's not that big of a deal because I can just do what I usually do with my jackets, which is I like to roll it up. That way, when I put my arms up, it doesn't expose my base layers or my belly. It just doesn't give me any gaps in my insulation by doing that. And then in terms of my orangutan arms, it doesn't roll up on my wrists whenever I put my arms up in the air or stretch them out to the side or front. Now, like we talked about in my level 3 video, puffers rely on loft in order to create volume, in order to trap warm air. So if you compress a puffer, it is going to lose that volume and its loft, thus losing insulation. But this can actually work in your favor if you're wearing something like body armor or if you have a pack frame sitting against your back. So if you throw a plate carrier on or a pack over top, this is going to compress the jacket underneath. But this can actually work in your favor because body armor is not known for being very breathable, right? So you're not stacking as much insulation on the areas that the body armor is going to cover. So something like a fleece does not compress as much, so you have all of that fur sitting underneath the plate carrier or a pack frame, whereas because this is now compressed and all the insulation is basically not doing anything to insulate, you're really just dealing with not so breathable plate carrier that most people that use plate carriers are already used to. And the other cool thing is that because the loft compresses, that means you don't have to make a ton of adjustments to the actual vest itself when you need to add it over a puffer as opposed to something like a thick fleece. And it's pretty common to see operators doing exactly this, wearing their body armor over top of a puffer in cold weather environments. Now, although puffers are significantly lighter and more packable than fleeces, this does come at a price. The very lightweight packable shell of the Level 3 Alpha is very thin and very fragile, honestly. Being Level 3 plus Level 4, this thing does suffer from the same issue as a Level 4 wind shirt, which is it's not very durable, especially when compared to something like a Level 5 soft shell, which is a true outer garment. And the biggest issue when it comes to damaging this outer shell fabric of a puffer, that allows the insulation, also known as batting, to discharge from inside of the garment, and then the garment will literally lose warmth value because, well, all your fluff is gone. So because of this, low loft puffers really are not ideal when it comes to field use or bushwhacking. fleeces are still just the bushwhacking champions because those things can get ripped and torn on, and then the insulation isn't just going to fall out. Now, as you can see, I can very easily throw the level 3 alpha over top of my level 5 soft shell, but the level 3 alpha, in my opinion, works best as a mid layer, which means in the middle of your system. So if I throw the level 3 alpha over top of my base layer, which is presently just a level 1 alpha, a t-shirt, the level 3 alpha then fits very nicely underneath my level 5. And then the level 5 soft shell, which is very durable, is going to protect the level 3 alpha underneath from getting ripped and torn apart by things like crampons, ice tools, ropes, pack straps, whatever, you know? Now, even just looking at the construction of this jacket, it was definitely designed to be a mid layer. It has a very close fit. I typically wear medium tops, and this thing sits very close to my body, whereas the level 5 is very big and oversized in order to fit over multiple layers. So this thing's really just best suited for fitting over something like a combat shirt or base layers. Now, we also see that there are no loop panels here on the shoulders for ID markers. The funny thing about ID markers is that you want people to see them. So if you see a garment that's designed for the military that doesn't have a spot for putting ID markers, then it's typically not something that was designed to be worn as an outer garment. So if you want to add ID markers, then you would need to add over something like a soft shell, like the level 5, and you can add things like your country's flags or your unit patches up top, and then the level 3 alpha will sit on underneath and just keep you nice and warm. Now, wearing multiple shells on top of each other may seem redundant, but it does actually have some value to it. Yes, a fleece underneath a soft shell is going to be more breathable than a low loft puffer underneath the soft shell. But because the level 3 alpha has nylon fabric on the body facing side as well as the outer layer, this means that it's going to slide over your base layers very nicely. So instead of getting that, like, you know, Velcro effect that you get throwing a fleece over a long sleeve base layer where the sleeves stick to each other and then they roll up and they're at different heights and it's really uncomfortable, and then you get chilly wrist syndrome. I hate it. I think it's really annoying. The low loft puffer, on the other hand, is just going to glide very nicely over top of your base layer. And then when you add a soft shell on over top, same thing. The soft shell is going to glide over the level 3 alpha very nicely and easily. The sleeves are not going to stick to each other, and it just goes on really well. The biggest issue with the low loft puffer, in my opinion, though, is the fact that it has really bad next to skin feel. Fleeces feel much better against your skin. This nylon fabric on the inside, however, it just stinks. So fleeces have better next to skin feel. Low loft puffers have better in between layers feel. So something that I really like about my level 4 wind shirt is the fact that it has a hood. If I want maximum wind or light rain protection, having a hood is a nice touch. But of course, this thing is made for high speed, low drag guys who are typically wearing ballistic helmets. Ballistic helmets that are typically loaded out with a bunch of fancy lights, strobes, communications, night vision stuff, you know, the works. So you either have to have a gigantic hood that can fit over all of that stuff, like we see on like the Equix Gen 3 Level 6, or just have no hood at all. And it looks like they have chosen the latter because this garment does not have any kind of hood. There's nothing that stows into here. It is just a collar. There's no hood. And especially if you have something like a bump helmet, which has vents in the top that rain can just directly come through, you know, you're kind of SOL there. But if you're not wearing a helmet and you want to protect your head, this can easily be remedied by wearing a windstopper or soft shell cap, or you can just use the hood from your soft shell that you're wearing over the top. Now, the level 3 alpha is very cool, but they're not always easy to find in your size, and they can also be very expensive. This one here I got for about 190 bucks used. So let's take a look at some other low loft puffer options and see how they fit within this level 3 alpha category. All right, so let's take a look at the Arc'teryx Atom Hoodie. This thing is one of the best mid layers when it comes to active insulation. It's extremely lightweight and packable, and it has these stretchy fleece-lined vent panels here on the sides that are really great for not just wicking moisture, but also for just keeping this thing very mobile, because of course, if it's not stretchy nylon, it can be a little restrictive. So this allows it to layer very nicely, as well as stay form-fitting so it can fit underneath another shell really well. And then of course it has a very light and thin outer fabric that is going to be windproof and water resistant. Now, these stretchy fleece-lined stretch panels here on the side are probably my favorite design feature of this garment, but I think that these are actually what take it out of this level 3 alpha definition. And that's because it literally makes a gap in this wind shell fabric. So when you're standing around in high winds and you're only wearing this over a base layer, you can actually feel the winds punching through that side vent panel, and it makes you want to put another shell on over top. So typically what I do when I'm ice climbing specifically is I will wear my level 5 over top of my Atom hoodie, and then I'll throw this big old hood over top of my climbing helmet, and it keeps me nice and warm and protected. It's just an amazing active mid layer, but in terms of wind protection, it's not its main job. Now, both the level 3 alpha and the Arc'teryx Atom hoodie suffer from being way too expensive itis. So that is why we're going to take a look at an offering from Venture Surplus. All right, so this here is the Woobie hoodie that Venture Surplus has on their website. And basically all it is, it's just a much better standalone version of the M65 field jacket liner. This is the pullover version that is very lightweight and packable because it doesn't have a full length zipper. And it does a great job of being an excellent bare bones, lightweight and packable insulation layer. So as you can see, much like the M65 field jacket liner, this thing is quilted. That quilting is a result of the needle punching directly through the outer and inner fabric. And every time that needle punches through, it creates a direct passageway for both wind and water to come through the garment. So again, I would not classify this thing as fitting within the level 3 alpha definition. But again, this thing is a great insulation layer. It's a nice lightweight and packable alternative to a fleece. And although it does have the quilted design, it does just fine in mild winds, as well as being like very light drizzle resistant, because it is at the end of the day a nylon tightly woven outer fabric. And for the price, I think it's absolutely worth it because again, I got my level 3 alpha for about $200, and then the Arc'teryx Atom hoodie is like somewhere around like $300 now. So for 60 bucks, I think that this thing takes the cake for being an affordable and usable mid layer. So that just about does it for level 3 alpha. Let's now move on to level 3 bravo. I don't feel like I can talk about one without talking about the other because these things are frequently confused and commonly misunderstood. So I do want to show them side by side in one video as opposed to splitting this into 2 separate videos. So bear with me if this video is a little bit long. So, like I said before, the level 3 Bravo is still a low loft insulation layer, except this time instead of having a windproof outer fabric, this actually has a waterproof hard shell. So the level 3 Alpha and the level 3 Bravo are very commonly confused because they look really similar, especially when they're in similar patterns. And the biggest difference between the two, to help you easily distinguish them, is the fact that the level 3 Bravo has zippered shoulder pockets, as well as a little loop panel here that is the same pattern as the jacket. So they're pretty hard to see. So if you're looking at someone's listing on eBay or Facebook, definitely zoom in and check to see if there are shoulder pockets. If you see shoulder pockets and Velcro, that is the Bravo, the hard shell version. But just to make it a little bit easier for you guys throughout the video, I'm gonna put some little IRUS flags that I got from Venture Surplus up here on the shoulders, just to, easily distinguish the two of them. So level 3 Bravo is once again going to combine 2 levels into one garment, except this time, instead of the level 3 insulation layer and the level 4 wind shirt, we're now combining the level 3 insulation layer and the level 6 hard shell. Now, this actually makes a lot of sense combining 2 static layers. Level 3 is typically a static layer in cool weather, and then a level 6 hard shell is typically just a static layer, period, because you don't want to move around too much with them because they are not very breathable. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to combine them into one garment and effectively making a cold, wet weather belay jacket. Now, because this is combining a level 6 hard shell, that kind of makes it an outer layer instead of a mid layer like the level 3 Alpha. Level 6 is designed to protect everything underneath from getting wet. So naturally, it is designed as an outer layer that is supposed to be thrown over top of everything that you're wearing. So because it's an outer layer, I think maybe the mid layer should have been kept together, and then level 3 Alpha could have stayed in the level 3 category, and then level 3 Bravo could have been designated as like level 6 Alpha. I do kind of see the vision because we are keeping the insulation layers together. But in my opinion, might have been nice to keep the mid layers and the outer layers separate. But that's just me. Who am I to argue Patagonia? They are always right. So once again, I like to think of this thing as my cold, wet weather belay jacket. You know, for those like tricky shoulder seasons, because if you've ever been in a cold, wet weather environment, you know it sucks way more than a cold, dry environment. Like below freezing and dry is so much more manageable than like 40 degrees and raining. Now, the only belay jacket that exists in the Block 0 and Block 1 systems is the Level 7. However, if you try using a Level 7 belay jacket in like those 30s, 40s, 50s degree Fahrenheit with humidity and rain, well, the Level 7 has way too much insulation, so you're going to sweat and you're going to get wet from the inside out as opposed to cooking yourself dry. And then the Level 7 is also water resistant, not waterproof. So if it is dumping rain, it's not going to protect you. So you're also going to get wet from the outside in. This causes a situation that I like to call fucked. Now, of course, like I showed you in my PCU visual layering guide, in cold, wet weather, adding a fleece over top and then adding a level 6 hard shell over top of that is typically what you want to do to add the right level of insulation and water protection. Now the thing is, adding a fleece over top of something like the level 5 soft shell is not the easiest thing because again, it has that Velcro effect where it starts pulling on the fabrics and it gets all messed up. It's not very quick. It's a lot faster to add something with a nylon inner fabric like the level 3 Bravo, and this can be easily thrown over whatever you're wearing with one garment instead of adding a fleece and then a hard shell, which again reduces the time that it takes to add insulation, water protection, and then preserving that precious body heat that you earned while you were being active. And because it's a puffer, that makes it very light and packable, so it can even fit in a very small modular assault pack like this one here from 3F Supply. And it can fit in there with the rest of your assault load, and then you have insulation and rain protection all in one that can fit in a pretty small package. So the pocket layout of this jacket is very similar to the level 3 Alpha, so that's why these tend to get confused, right? So we still have zippered hand warmer pockets down here at the bottom of the jacket, just like the level 3 Alpha, and then we also have a little chest pocket on the outside, so nothing too different there. Again, the biggest difference with these jackets is the fact that we have a little bit of loop panel here with a small little shoulder pocket, which is nice for adding ID markers and then putting more admin stuff in there like a Right in the Rain or even just some snacks, which I like to do. Staying on the arm, we have, again, elastic cuffs, but instead of having that tan little thin strip of elastic, we have a very beefy piece, maybe 1 inch wide piece of elastic going around the cuff. Looking at the inside of the jacket, this time we do have a very big mesh stow pocket that is present on both sides, very similar to what we see on the level 7 belay jackets. So the use case for this is you can take something like a wet little skull cap or socks or glove liners, shove it in there and then zip it up. It keeps nice and close to your body, and then you can effectively cook that thing dry using your body heat. Now, I do have one small gripe with this jacket, and that's in regards to its role as a rain layer. So, tell me, where does rain come from? That's right, the sky. So what part of the body is going to get hit the hardest? Yes, that's right, your head. So why on God's earth is there not a big ass hood on this thing to protect you from the rain? At least with the level 3 Alpha, it kind of makes sense because it's a mid layer. So if you throw a soft shell or a hard shell over top of it, you can use the hood from that. But this thing already is an outer layer. Like, what am I supposed to do? Add another Gore-tex hard shell over top of it so I can use the hood? No, it's stupid. It kind of drives me nuts. Now, again, this is designed for more combat-centric roles. So those guys are going to be wearing ballistic helmets that are a shell all of their own, and they're usually loaded up with comms and night vision and counterbalances and battery packs and strobes and stuff. So again, you would need a gigantic hood to fit over top of all of that, or you could just not have a hood at all. The only issue here is that if you're not wearing a big old shell helmet, if you're wearing, let's say, a bump helmet that has vent holes, or if you're just not wearing a helmet at all, well, you're pretty SOL. Now, you could use the hood from a level 5 or level 4 that you wear underneath this thing, but the thing with those hoods is that they're not waterproof. They're only water resistant, so they can only do so much. But once again, the hood thing isn't really a deal breaker for me, because I do feel that this is a super cool piece of kit that adds something a little bit more unique to your system than, say, the level 3 Alpha. Low loft puffers with some sort of wind and water resistant shell on it, they're everywhere. I swear every single company that makes clothing has one. Okay, so there's a lot more variety, there's a lot more to choose from out there. And if you want to see for yourself, go on REI right now. So the level 3 alpha here really doesn't do anything super special because there's so much variety out there and you can pick and choose which one works best for you. I swear there's like a ton of different variations of like the Arc'teryx Atom hoodie. But the level 3 Bravo, on the other hand, I feel does something a little bit more unique because typically we only see insulated hard shells on something like ski jackets, you know, for people who just do like downhill skiing at ski resorts, where the extent of their layering knowledge is like, oh, it's cold, so I want something with insulation. Oh, there's also snow on the ground, so I want it to be waterproof, and then that's it. But if you are going to be living out in the field for days or weeks on end in a cold weather environment, because that is your job in the military, or if you're doing more extreme winter activities like ice climbing or mountaineering, then you want something that is designed to do that, right? Those ski jackets typically favor fashion over function. So they're typically heavier and they just have a bunch of like random features that you don't really need. Whereas the Patagonia level 3 Bravo, I mean, this thing is really, really nice. You know, it packs down really, really small and it's just really, really high quality, especially compared to like, you know, I'm talking about like Burton or like Spider ski jackets. So in my opinion, the ideal setup for the level 3 Bravo would be to have it stowed inside of your pack. That way it's ready to go when you need it once you go static in a cold, wet weather environment. And then your level 4 wind shirt would live inside of a cargo pocket and wait for you to need it in the event of inclement weather while you're being active. So that way you have active weather protection ready to go on your person, and then you have static cold, wet weather protection in your pack ready to go when you need it. Now, in regards to the fit and finish of this jacket, I did size up on this thing to a large regular instead of a medium long. Large reg still fits my shoulders and my arms as well as my torso, but it gives me a little bit more room on the inside. That's nice because it allows me to throw it over some extra layers if I need to, or if I want to throw it over a very low profile plate carrier. Here I have a Crye JPC 1.0, and I have 3 YouTube compliant airsoft magazines in here. And the level 3 Bravo fits very easily over something like this. It really doesn't have any other pockets or doodads going on here except for those 3 mag pouches. But that's nice because it allows me to cover up my entire torso, trap as much heat as possible, but still being able to have access to the combat load without needing to keep the jacket fully unzipped, which is really nice. And then when I'm not wearing the plate carrier, the large regular doesn't have so much room on the inside that it creates too much dead space. Too much dead space creates a very inefficient warming layer because your body needs to work harder to warm all that dead air in there. All right, so speaking of layers that are designed purely for military application, let's take a look at something else that fits within this level 3 Bravo designation. This is the Wild Things Low Loft FRG Gore-tex Pyrad top and bottom. Now, this is essentially Wild Things' own version of level 3B. This is a low loft puffer with a Gore-tex membrane. But what makes this set special is the fact that A, it's a set, right? We actually have a top and bottom, whereas with the Patagonia L3A and L3B, they were just tops. And the other cool thing is the fact that this is actually fire retardant Gore-tex. This is made of Gore-tex Pyrad, which is their own fire retardant system, and that is going to make sure that your cold weather system doesn't just protect you from the cold, but also from heat. Extreme heat, namely like fire and explosions. One of the biggest issues with the original PCU systems was that they were not fire retardant, and that's not good because synthetic fibers have a tendency to melt to your flesh in the case of high heat. So in a combat setting where there tends to be very high heat, it makes sense that you want your clothes to be able to withstand that. Now, like I said, this is using Gore-tex Pyrad, and the best way to identify this from Wild Things line is from the texturing on the outside. It has this kind of snake skin texture to it, which I think looks really, really cool. But looking cool is only half the battle. Your clothes not melting to your flesh is the other half. So just like the Patagonia level 3B, it's very similar in that we have a top pocket, except this time it's on the inside. We do have little loop panels here for ID markers. We have shoulder pockets, And then we also have some little hand pockets down here at the bottom, which are fleece lined, which is really nice. But the top really isn't the coolest part about the set. It's actually the bottoms. The bottoms are really awesome because they have the full side zip, which I love seeing on cold weather bottoms, because this means it allows you to remove and don the pants without having to take off your boots. Now, the Patagonia Level 3 Bravo and the Wild Things Low Loft FR also both suffer from being way too expensive itis. So that is why I want to show you an offering from Snugpak that Venture Surplus has available on their website. So what we're looking at here is the Snugpak Torrent, you know, like a torrential downpour. This is the Torrent. And this thing is very well insulated. It feels very comparable to the Level 3 Bravo. And being brand new, it has a lot of really good loft in it. All right, so looking at the little card that came with it, the comfort rating for this thing is 23 degrees Fahrenheit. And the temp low, which I'm going to guess is the survival rating, is 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Both of those are probably pretty optimistic. But I will say that this thing, being comparable to the Level 3 Bravo, I do want to say that this is good for like a cold, wet environment, somewhere around the freezing to above freezing mark. This is a size medium. Venture Surplus did note that these things have a pretty close fit. They have an athletic fit. And it fits very similarly to the Level 3 Alpha that I have in a medium long. So that is very nice. The weight for this medium is 850 grams or 30 ounces. And the outer fabric is Paratex Dry. And the inner fabric is Paratex Light. And then the loft insulation that they use as the fill is called Softy. This thing is completely seam taped, but because we do have insulation on the inside, you can't see the seam taping. But this thing is designed as a hard shell, which is very nice. And being a rain layer, the most important part is the fact that it actually has a hood. Look at that. Look, a hood for the rain, right? Your shoulders and your head get hit the hardest when it's raining, and it has a hood. Doesn't that make a lot of sense? So this is actually a really nice hood. It does have adjustment down here around the brim of the hood, and it also has my favorite little adjustment here in the back that just makes it hug your head a little bit nicer. So that is super cool to see. But if you're one of the few people that actually really liked how the Level 3 Bravo doesn't have a hood, well, you're in luck, because this thing actually has a tearaway hood with this tiny little zipper back here, and then with a little bit of Velcro, the hood just rips right off. So that is super duper cool. And it actually looks really nice without the hood. I like it a lot. I do really like this thing a lot. I know that there's a lot of debate over the quality of modern Snugpak stuff, but I think this thing looks and feels really good, and they put a lot of really good thought into this thing. Now, I'm absolutely dying inside of this right now because I'm not in a cold, wet weather environment. I'm in my room, but we're in luck because this thing actually has pit zips. They also have some mesh here, which I think is pretty cool because sometimes when the pit zips are open, I put on a jacket, I just shove my hand through the open hole. So I think the mesh will mitigate that. Again, we do have a full-length zipper, except this one does actually have a double zipper. So if you are wearing this with a climbing harness, you can pop your belay loop through, which is really, really nice. We do have two little hand pockets down here on the bottom that are zippered, but they do also have a little bit of fleece lining on the inside. So that just keeps your hands a little bit warmer and drier when you put them on in here. Now, looking on the inside of the jacket, we do have a little tiny pocket in here that's going to keep your phone nice and warm and dry and close to your body. Looking at the cuffs, we do have some Velcro adjustment, but we don't have any elastic, which I love seeing elastic because I don't want to have to mess with Velcro every time I take a garment on and off. It's kind of annoying, but not a deal breaker. And then, of course, down here at the bottom, we do have some hem adjustments here with some shock cords. So that is really cool. So if you think that the Level 3 Bravo category will fit within your system, I think that the Snugpak Torrent will definitely fit within your budget, especially compared to the offerings from Patagonia and Wild Things. So I think that this thing is great. I definitely want to thank Venture Surplus for sending this out. They actually put this thing on their website as I was planning out this video. So that was super clutch. I'm really glad they did that because I can actually show you guys something that is affordable and attainable and is available on their website for $150. And you can use discount code KICKREAP for an additional 10% off. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I think these things are really cool. And although these are special garments designed for special people, special forces, their utility is actually a little bit more general purpose in nature. If you think about the 7-level layering system, each level has a specific purpose. But when we combine multiple levels into one garment, we end up creating something that does many things very well, but doesn't really excel at any one of those things. It reminds me a lot of the Outdoor Research Wall Creeper that we reviewed on this channel, which was a 3-in-1 bivy, mountain shelter, and rain layer. Again, did all those things pretty well, but didn't excel at any one of them. And that's not entirely a bad thing, because general purpose gear is great at fitting into a broader range of situations, even though it loses some of the best qualities of the gear that it aims to replace. Definitely be wary about combining the levels into one garment because it does end up making your system a little less adaptable. Again, I don't think that this Level 3 Alpha is a replacement for a fleece and a wind shirt, and this Level 3 Bravo is definitely not a replacement for a hard shell standalone jacket. These are just some cool little turnkey solutions that might be helpful, but it is up to you to test your gear to find out what you need for your own specific physiology, environment, and task. The value that these two garments add to your system actually come from the volume, weight, and time that they reduce to help you climb light, fast, and high, as Mark Twain would put it. The two of these are definitely super cool and they have a lot of utility, but at the end of the day, they're just two more tools inside of your toolbox. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I've been wanting to do a review on these two special little garments for a while now. They're definitely very cool. And I'm glad that I was able to get my hands on them for, a decent price. Not great though, but the category of garment that they represent is definitely very cool. So I hope you guys learn something. I hope you guys do your own research and find what works best for you. I definitely want to thank Venture Surplus for sending out some really nice options for me to be able to recommend to you guys, as well as giving us the discount code to help you guys get closer to having some video game IRL moments in the mountains. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.